Hi, welcome back to the channel. I'm Michelle, and today I'm going to be doing a mid-year homeschool update for our group family subjects. So if you're new to my channel, I have an 11-year-old in 6th grade, an 8-year-old doing 2nd, 3rd grade level work, and an almost 5-year-old now doing kindergarten level work. So for group subjects, they're obviously aimed at my two older children. Most grade level wise, it's aimed at my oldest, who's in 6th grade. My 8-year-old joins for all group activities and participates at her level capabilities, her skill level. And then my 5-year-old usually just joins us, or soon to be 5-year-old, usually just joins us to sit in and listen and participate in some of the discussion for fun. So our group subjects are Monday through Thursday, we do history, and this year we are using United States history with core knowledge. Tuesday, we do art. I'll show you what we're using for that. Wednesday is it's usually a social justice unit. From August, when we started school, to the beginning of November, it was the Mint and Bloom election study. And then the rest of November, we did our Native American Heritage Month study. December, we did a European Christmas study. And now in January, we are going back to the main social justice theme, which is we're using core knowledge, blessings of liberty, for our social justice for the remaining of the year. And then Thursday and Friday, we do core knowledge science, 5th grade this year. And Friday, we also do philosophy for kids. So that's a broad overview of our group subjects. That's our schedule. You can see my schedule video. It hasn't changed since I made it in August. The only thing that really rotates is that Wednesday social justice unit. So let's start with history. So we've been using core knowledge United States history. This is our 2nd year using United States history. Last year we did Oh Freedom, United States history. And I did that on purpose, that I split into 2 years because I think United States history, it's a lot of information to cover. So 2 years really helps you kind of cover the basis of everything. And I did Oh Freedom last year because I wanted my kids' first exposure to the bulk of United States history. Coming from those, we don't often hear the perspectives. We don't hear the people being ostracized. I think that's really important for kids to understand and have connections, because a lot of the Oh Freedom, we were reading stories from the perspective of kids during those times. And I think it helps make that connection in history when they can do that. And I've seen that using core knowledge United States history this year, that they're able to draw on things they've remember from last year. Often I'll find myself saying, do you remember when we learned about this? And they're like, yeah. So core knowledge United States history is aimed at 7th grade. It's completely free online. I talk about this a lot on my channel. I use a lot of core knowledge. You can see I use core knowledge science, I use core knowledge language arts for my kids. So core knowledge United States history, I put the reader, because it comes with kind of like a textbook, on my Mac desktop because it's pretty big. And then the teacher guide is on my Samsung tablet. And then we go through it like that. And I will say it's mainly discussion based. There's not a lot of activities. There's opportunities to write and dig deeper and do research projects, absolutely. But I love that the base of it is discussion, because that's what I want in United States history. I don't want it to be memorization of dates and timelines and all that, geography. I want them to understand the basis of what happened and the motivations behind those and the different perspectives being told. And I think core knowledge does a wonderful job with this. I do think, now with the United States history, it gives you the option with core knowledge to do it in 1 year or split it into 2. I chose to cover the United States history in 1 year because we already have that background from Oh Freedom. I didn't want to stretch it into 3 years, but I feel like you could do United States history with core knowledge, do the 2-year program, and definitely bring in some more of those perspectives. I think that would be a wonderful kind of spine for you to work from if that's something you're looking for in the future. But I really like the way we did it. Oh Freedom first, and then a year of core knowledge United States history. But like I said, it gives you kind of a broad overview of the main, bullet points of history. But what I really love is that through every chapter, you're given other perspectives. So again, teacher guides are really essential in core knowledge. The readers are great, but the bulk of your resources are in your teacher guides. As you can see here, they provide you with a lesson plan. So literally, I just cross off when we finish it. We do, like I said, history Monday through Thursday. And we are more than halfway done with this program. We will probably finish in March, maybe April, because we do it 4 days a week, but you could just do it 2 days and stretch it out however you want to do it. But we've covered a lot of information, and what I like about this is that scheduled in, there's something called a learning lab, which gives you an opportunity to dive deeper, because within the readers, there's questions or research prompts that you could use this time to go in. And I like that it's scheduled, not optional. You could, of course, make it optional, but I like when activities are already scheduled in, so I can literally just pick this up and go. I don't have to do a lot of prep work for it. As you can see here, there's primary source activities already within this. So like I said, it's bringing in those different perspectives. So when we were talking about, the Civil War and Reconstruction and all these things, it was bringing in the perspective of how Black Union soldiers were essential for the North winning the Civil War, brought in their perspective. We looked at physical documentation of former slaves during that time fighting for it. So it was really cool to see that. They did the same thing with Native Americans. We dove deep in the Trail of Tears, but we also did some art critique and looked at art depicting Native Americans. We did the same thing when we talked about immigration. We looked at political cartoons and how these groups of people were being depicted and how that would form sentiment or ideas people would have about these certain groups. So again, I love that it's not just teaching to them, but getting them to think, bringing in those other perspectives. And it's a lot of discussing things. And a lot of it is very relevant today. We were just talking about the Spanish-American War last week, the importance of the Panama Canal that relates to, events happening now and comments made about the Panama Canal. So I think it's very relevant. I think it's really well done. I love that the primary source documents are already in there. It's giving you separate little teacher guides to use with those primary source documents. It's a really great program, and it's completely free. So I highly recommend it. It does have opportunities for assessment as well. When we made it halfway through the year, we did the mid-year assessment every time, because it's split into 2 volumes. When you finish volume 1, there's a kind of final. When you finish volume 2, there's a final. So there are opportunities for assessment, as you can see here. And my kids did wonderful on the assessment. But again, I like that it's focused on discussion, talking about different perspectives, not just drilling dates and figures and things like that. There's so much more to history. I want my kids to see the human part of history, not just history as this boring thing that happened. So that's Monday through Thursday. Tuesday, we've been doing art. So we've been using this Glencoe Introduction to Art. I got these off thrift books. Really cheap, inexpensive. They're aimed at middle school, so 6th, 7th, 8th. This would be the 6th grade level. And we are doing really well with it. It does remind me a lot of the Harcourt art books that we used previously, but it goes more in depth. It's using more technical language, which I like, and there's different studio activities, as you can see in here. It'll give you a student studio activity, which is an activity you do. So you learn about something, you do an activity. Now there's not always an activity with every single lesson, but usually every other lesson there will at least be an activity. So recently we were learning about how to critique art, and that was really cool. So we looked at the 3 main things they look at is subject and elements of art, and then context. What's the message that the artist is trying to get across? And we learned that, and then we critique some art using some, we have a big art museum book. They picked out certain pictures, and we each art critiqued it, and it was really cool to see kind of how the stories they created of what they think that painting was, what was the message of it, and then we read the little biography on the next page of that painting, and they would see if they were right. So it was really cool. But I do think it's a good resource. I think the teacher guide is helpful because it does have the answers, because there's always questions in it. And there's also some, like you can see here, some chapter in the review questions. You're only going to get those answers if you have the teacher book. And I did not find the teacher book to be expensive at all. I think it was like $10. So that's, I think it's helpful to have both of those. So one thing I did supplement, that some of the studio activities, and again, maybe because it's meant for a public school art, that they would assume the art teacher has some basic skills in drawing, which I don't. I'm working on it. But I did supplement some things to kind of help them, because when you get a simple assignment of making a portrait, having a general idea of how to break that down into steps, at least for me as someone who's very logical, and you know, if I see a step with a picture, bam, 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 that's really easy. I can't just look at something and draw it. I need more direction than that, which again is good and positive in art, that my 8-year-old can definitely just see something and go with it without any inhibitions. Well, my oldest and I are like, well, wait, well, how do we do it? So I did supplement some books with it. So this is Art for Kids Drawing, and this is just because my daughter got it in one of her Doodle Crate boxes, and then I picked this up. It's You Can Draw in 30 Days with Mark Kistler. And thank you to the person who pointed out that he has a YouTube video or a YouTube channel. We've been using that, and you'll see that in a little bit. But this really kind of gives you the basics of drawing, and what I really like here is kind of finding your artist eye. So getting out of your head, which is something I really needed to get. And it gives you activities like drawing upside down, which is a really good activity to get out of your head. But what I really liked is that it broke it down that every picture is just a combination of lines and shapes. And when you approach art, or at least drawing and sketching like that, I think it makes it a lot easier when you realize things is just lines and circles and shapes and different things, and it does, you know, teach about perspective. So this was really helpful because I think learning to draw and sketch is important in art, because when whether you're doing painting or watercolor, having a general knowledge of sketching and drawing is important. And this was really fun too. This is kind of like, you know how there's Art for Kids Hub? I think this predates that. This is kind of the version before it, that it breaks it down step by step, and he does have, you know, free YouTube videos, which we used, but it did help kind of navigate that sketching, but also building confidence. So I thought I'd show a couple things. This was one of the Mark Kistler videos we did. And I would usually find a video that related to whatever lesson we were learning in here. And then one of the lessons we did was looking at different types of paint, so watercolors, oil pastels, tempera paint, all those, and then just making different swatches of them and talking about when you would use certain types of paint. This was the portraits they did. This is my 8-year-old's Bunny, and this is my 11-year-old's Lion, Leroy. And then one thing I did with my oldest as well. So I made a video, I'll link it above, about how I was trying new things, you know, kind of artistic, because I'm not that naturally artistic person. I spent most of my life avoiding it because I assumed I was bad at it. So I'm trying to correct that. And one of the things I picked up was Wonders of Watercolor by Thistle and Viscous. And this was solely for me to kind of understand, because I've never attempted watercolor in my life, so I wanted to give it a try. So while doing this, my oldest actually joined me with the lessons. This was not part of our curriculum, but she saw me doing it and wanted to do it too. So we did this one together, and she wrote the Japanese because she really is into Japanese. A stingray. And I thought this was okay for me, especially for someone, an introduction to watercolor. It helped brush strokes, learning different watercolor techniques. It was helpful in that way. I just needed a little bit more help, because sometimes it wouldn't turn out the way it did in the book or in the curriculum, and I'm like, well, how do I troubleshoot this? I did learn some techniques, and I was able to, this year actually, every December, my daughter takes horseback riding through the entire year, but every December I make her writing instructor a handmade card. And it's usually something crafty, because she knows both of us are very into that type of thing, crafting. So this year I had the goal of making her a watercolor snow globe of the ranch which my daughter rides at. So I found a YouTube tutorial, followed it, and I was really happy with how it turned out. And I spent hours on it, because especially with watercolor you have to let certain sections dry, which is probably the hardest part, waiting for things to dry. But it was so much fun. I enjoyed myself so much doing it, but I did use some of the techniques I learned in here to kind of figure out what to do. And I also used the steps and skills we learned in sketching to literally sketch out the barn. This was something completely made from myself. Yes, I watched the YouTube tutorial on how to, you know, make the snow globe and make it look watery and things like that. but a lot of skills came from me, and I was so proud of myself, and I'll put up a picture for you guys to see because I was really happy with how it turned out. But I think that's really important for my kids to see that, you know, I'm not the best at art. It's not something that comes naturally to me, but I'm in there trying and I'm actually enjoying it, which is the point of art. There's no perfection in art. So it has been going really well. I'm glad that we're doing art every single week. Again, I think, like I said, scheduling it in is important. I think art is one of those things that can often get pushed to the side because it's not needed, but you do get a lot of benefit from it. So Wednesday, like I said, from August to the beginning of November, we did the Mint and Bloom election study. We did all 4 parts of it, and I really enjoyed it. Now, it's obviously biased. I'm not going to pretend it's not. It definitely was leaning towards Harris. There was links to watch Trump's rallies and things like that, and we did. We watched the presidential debates, the original ones with Biden and Trump. We watched when Harris and Trump. We watched the vice presidential debates. We watched rallies from both sides. I feel like my kids were really informed going into this election. And although the results were not what we wanted to see, I think they learned a lot from the experience about the importance of voting, about being an educated voter, about knowing the candidates and what they stand for is really important. And especially since it did not go the way we wanted, what we do now from here, how can we still be active in our community and make positive change in the direction we're heading towards, no matter if your opponent wins or loses. So this we really enjoyed, and I think we learned a lot from. November, we did the Native American Heritage Study, which I will link up that video, did a whole video on that. Went really well. We focused mainly on, we used braided sweetgrass. We used the kids version, not the adult version. And it really focused on nature, science, and spirituality, which I absolutely love that combo. And I have always had a really deep respect for how Native Americans view nature, how they interact with it, the natural world, the respect that they have for it. And that really hits well with my oldest, who is very much like that as well. So it was interesting to take the scientific aspect of it, the natural aspect of it, but also the spiritual aspect of it. We had a lot of fun. My kids are well informed, which I guess I never really thought too much of it, but my kids play with the neighbor kids, and the neighbor kids are 9 and 11. And they were talking about November, you know, what they were learning about, and the kids next door don't even know what Native Americans are. So that tells me that I'm doing well more than enough, and that if my kids can share information about what they're learning, that's awesome with other kids. The more awareness and information that is brought to kids, I think, is really helpful. Although sometimes it can be hard, it is beneficial and important to learn our history and what that history entails. So December, we did our European history study, which again, I make a video of that if you want to see everything I used. It went really well. We focused on 3 European countries. We did Switzerland, Italy, and Germany, and we focused on making food around those because I had a book from the Museum of Science and Industry, because they do trees around the world every December, which we go and see. And they have recipes from all around the different countries. So for Italy, we did, it was almost like, I forget what it was called, but it was almost like a fried dough, kind of like a funnel cake, which we would have here. Kids like that. Again, everything's made gluten-free because of my 8-year-old has celiac disease, so everything's gluten-free. And there was no issues adjusting the recipes because I'm just used to it, you know, 4 or 5 years in being gluten-free, how to do that. And thank you for those who suggested books for Switzerland, because I was having some books. We would watch the Rick Steves European YouTube video on that specific area, kind of give them a visual of what it was like. We would read a book about the traditions of that, and then we would read some books either taking place in those regions or about those regions during Christmas time. And I was having some trouble finding some for Switzerland, and you guys gave me some great ideas. So thank you. I actually found 3 books that we could do for Switzerland. So I feel like they got a good cultural experience of it. And for Switzerland, we did fondue, and the kids thought that was super fun. And then for Germany, we did Christmas bread, or Stollen, I believe it's called. It's like an orange fruit bread with marzipan in the middle. I thought it was really good. And with gluten-free baking, you never know how it's going to turn out because it tends to be denser because you're removing the gluten. And the recipe I had made too low, so I was really nervous. I was like, is this going to be like I'm baking a brick? And it didn't work out, but it actually turned out really good. And my kids, at least I enjoyed it. My oldest enjoyed it. The other two enjoyed the bread, but not the marzipan. But it was fun getting in the kitchen, learning about different traditions, different cultures, because that's kind of one of my goals for these December studies, is that my kids realize that there are many other traditions in this world, that there's many different belief systems, that there's many different cultural differences out there, that just because we celebrate a certain way does not mean that's the only way to celebrate or the best way to celebrate. That I want them to be culturally aware that there's many different traditions, beliefs out there, and celebrations. So that was accomplished. And like I said, now we are doing the Blessings of Liberty with core knowledge and focus on social justice issues. We started last week. We were looking at the preamble and we broke it down. So we watched the Schoolhouse Rock video, the preamble, which brought back some memories for me. And we broke down what each, line meant. And then we did an activity where we talked about, and there was a printout activity to write to, if the United States is living up to what the preamble says, what things we are currently doing, and ways we are not living up to that preamble, the introduction to the Constitution, ways we are not really hitting the mark on that. Again, bringing it into relevant times, talking about historical things, but bringing it to relevant times, which I think is really important, because that's why we're learning history. We're learning history so we don't continue the cycle of, oh my God, this is happening again, that they can make those connections and realize it's not something that just happened, it's something that's currently affecting us now. So again, that's been going really well. And let's see, Thursday and Friday would be science, and again, we're using core knowledge science. And I have a video, I'll link above for you, how I use that. I walk through exactly how I use it, because I do get questions about that. So we did the first unit, which is investigating matter, which is really good. We had a lot of fun experiments in different stations, and we used baking soda and vinegar, and we looked at different reactions, chemical reactions, and explosions and things like that. So the kids had a ton of fun with that. We did energy and matter, and the kids got to make models using clay of molecules, and they thought that was super fun. So core knowledge doesn't have a lot of hands-on activities. Again, just look through the teacher guide and give it a chance, actually read it through. We did a lot of, measuring. We got out a kitchen scale. It's the first thing I actually bought, besides magnetic tape to use these core knowledge units, was I bought a little digital kitchen scale, which will be useful since I do make my own bread with gluten-free baking and baked items, things like that. But looking how volume changes, how liquid, gas, those things change, different states of matter. We looked at energy transfer in an ecosystem, so we looked at food chains, food webs, and they got to make their own imaginary world. One of the activities was to create your own imaginary ecosystem. It could be realistic or, fantasy, mythical type thing. And the kids all made this elaborate ecosystem and drew out the plans and everything. And my almost 5-year-old said, well, maybe we should add in humans. And both my other kids said no immediately. My oldest said, no, if we add humans into the ecosystem, they'll just destroy it and lead to issues like climate change. And my 8-year-old said, no, we shouldn't introduce humans because they're just going to fight, because she's very much into history. So I thought that was really interesting that they made an ecosystem but chose to leave humans out because of their negative impact on ecosystems. But again, I think it's really important that they're learning how these things interact, how they're important. I feel like core knowledge has given them a really solid foundation in science. We are currently on modeling the Earth. So we're looking at the spheres, hydrosphere, geosphere, breaking those down, learning more about it. Again, it's going really well. Core knowledge has always gone really well for us, and it does have different activities. Everything's in your online resources. Nothing you really have to go out and find. You just print out the activities pages that go with it. It's always worked really well for us, and completely free, which really helps my budget. So the last thing is Friday is philosophy for kids. We've been working our way through this. We're about 3/4 of the way through. It's going really well. My kids really enjoy it, and I think even my almost 5-year-old really enjoys it. And I think it's because it gives them an opportunity to kind of think outside the box, especially when they're kids. It's very easy to see things as black and white, and there's a lot of gray in the world, and philosophy really flushes out the gray and showing how the different ways you can look at situations and how that might impact how you see it. Perspective is really important. So I think this is a great age to be talking about those things and to get them to see things from different perspectives. And philosophy is not about right or wrong, but about discussion and ideas, which is really great. So we've enjoyed that. And quick, we usually do it during lunch. We'll do 1 or 2 of the lessons really quick. They always enjoy the little quizzes that kind of talk about, well, which way would you side? Would you side with a philosopher and his theory on this, or would you not, and why? So they've had a lot of fun with that. And the only other group thing we do is we have our co-op, and this is something I've helped run for the last 4 years with another mom, and it's getting to the point where we're kind of weighing the future of it. And it's nothing, we did wrong. I think we've done a really good job providing opportunity for our community. There's just not a lot of community by me, homeschooling community. It's not a very popular choice. We don't live in a big city. We don't live in a rural area. We're kind of in between. Our nearest large city is an hour away, and there are co-ops in those cities that I think a lot of people go to. Locally, there's a small conservative Christian homeschooling group. Just not my jam. If you know anything about me personally, that's just not where I want to go. And this is kind of why we created this other co-op. But again, I've noticed that as the kids get older, less and less kids are being homeschooled. Most of the kids in my area go back in middle school, if not 5th grade. There's very, very few homeschooling kids in my area in high school. Most of them definitely go back for high school. So it's been hard that my oldest has been the oldest in all of these situations. And I know a lot of people talk about how socialization isn't an issue in homeschooling and that it's great for kids to be around multiple ages. And to a degree, I think that's true, but it's also hard when your kid's the oldest, that they do need social interaction with their peers, especially in their preteen and teenager years for social emotional development. It's an important thing. And I think a lot of people on here talking about how it's not, have those opportunities, those co-ops that they can go to, those organizations, those resources locally that they can. And it's not from a lack of trying on my part, it's a lack of opportunity in the area that I happen to live in. So going forward, we're going to make decisions on that because we've done, different activities in the past, we've done different times, different days to kind of make it more convenient for parents. We don't charge at all because I think there's enough things in homeschooling that cost money, and that could be one of the things that doesn't make it, because parents flake out a lot, honestly. They just do. Homeschooling parents flake out a lot. And without any accountability or responsibility towards it, it's easy to flake out. But I think it served its purpose that my kids have made really good friends with the consistent parents and kids that show up. So we'll decide, we're going to finish out this year with the schedule we have, and then next year decide going forward how we're going to do it. But I think for next year, I will be looking at one of those larger co-ops, and it will be about an hour away. I would have to drive. I think it's about 50 minutes away. But that's something that I need to do for my oldest. I need to be able to provide peer interaction with her. And that became really obvious to me. About a month ago, she went on a youth retreat with our church. And it was just an overnight thing, but it was for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and then a couple freshmen. And it was her first time being in a group of kids where she would be the youngest instead of the oldest, because in our homeschooling environment, it's a bunch of little kids, because homeschooling is super popular when they're little and it's fun and not a lot of work. As they get into middle school and high school, that's when it hits the pavement. It gets hard and you actually have to do stuff consistently, which a lot of people apparently don't like in homeschooling. But I was concerned about how she would do in that environment. And luckily my husband was on the trip, and my friend from church and her daughter was on the trip as well. So I kind of had some inside knowledge about how she was doing, and she did absolutely fantastic. And she really enjoyed it. They went on, hikes at nighttime and did all these team building exercises and just had a blast. And that to me kind of showed me that, yes, I do need to provide this more consistent, that she's getting older. She needs peer interaction. She needs to have those times where she's, giggling through the entire night with her friends in this camp, instead of, playing with the little 4 and 5-year-olds. Now, don't get me wrong, she loves little kids and she's very nurturing naturally, but she also needs to grow her social emotional. So providing those opportunities is going to be important and something I need to prioritize. And if I can't, to really question, where I go from here, because I do think socialization is that important. It's not just about having a friend group or someone you see once a week. It's so much more with how their brain works in the teenage years, how important those peer relationships really are. So that's kind of, where I am with that. But that is how family subjects have gone this past year, this past 5 months. It's gone really well. I really enjoy all the subjects we do. I really enjoy all the curriculum we use. Again, we're doing it on a consistent basis, so we're making a lot of progress, and it's been great. That's kind of how I sum up all of my update videos, is it's been great. That's why I don't update every month, because you guys would be like, oh my god, everything's always perfect there. But it's not just, me being a perfect homeschool parent or my kids being perfect homeschool kids. It's we all put effort and time and energy into it because this is an important priority in our life. And we're learning about things that are important, but also learning about things we're interested in and finding things they're interested in through those things they haven't been exposed to yet. So if you have any specific questions about anything I talked about, let me know. If not, thank you for watching.